They say tragedy doesn't send a warning, and I learned that the hard way on a windy Tuesday night when my house went from a warm, safe place to a pile of ashes in less than 3 hours. One moment, I was fixing a leaky faucet in the kitchen. The next, I was standing barefoot in the driveway watching flames devour 30 years of memories. The fire chief said it was the old attic wiring, something no one had touched since the 60s. Electrical failure. No one's fault. Just bad luck. When the smoke cleared, all I had left was my truck, my dog Rusty, and a vintage Airstream trailer I'd been restoring for fun. My home? Just a charred skeleton of beams and sorrow. But the real fire started the morning after, not with smoke, but with paper. There, taped to the half-melted remnants of my mailbox, was a letter from the HOA. A notice, typed in cold, perfect font, accusing me of violating Covenant 4.3b, unauthorized habitation of a mobile dwelling. I stood there, soot still in my hair, reading that absurd notice with shaking hands. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe someone didn't know the house had burned down. But no, this wasn't a clerical error. It was personal, and it had a name. Margaret Ellis. She was the president of the HOA. 70s, sharp as a blade. Always wore coral lipstick and walked her poodle Pebbles like she was patrolling a royal estate. Margaret was the kind of woman who called code enforcement over a Halloween pumpkin. She once fined a neighbor for hanging a hammock between 2 trees without written permission. A self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. And I had just become her favorite target. She showed up 2 days later in person, standing beside my trailer like it was a meth lab. Clipboard in hand, dog at heel, she tilted her head and gave me that tight-lipped smile that meant war. "This trailer can't stay here," she said, voice high and brittle. "It brings down the tone of the neighborhood." I looked at her, then at the still-smoking frame of my home behind her. "Margaret, I don't have a house." "Well," she sniffed, brushing imaginary dust off her blouse. "We all have to make sacrifices. But rules are rules." She walked away with her dog prancing beside her, like she'd just delivered a casserole. The next morning, a bright orange sticker was slapped on my trailer. Final warning. The fine, $150 per day. Retroactive. My insurance hadn't even come through yet. I tried calling the HOA office. No answer. Emails bounced back. When I ran into another board member at the local coffee shop, he looked away and muttered, "Margaret's handling this one." Of course she was. I hadn't eaten a hot meal in a week, was living off granola bars and bottled water, and Margaret Ellis had declared war on me like I was squatting in a parking lot. The kicker? She told people I was running a scam, that I burned down my own house for insurance money. I found out from my neighbor Dennis, who asked me straight up if it was true. Margaret had already poisoned the well. But what she didn't know was that I'd been recording everything. I installed 2 security cameras, one on the trailer, one on a lamppost facing the road. I started saving every notice, every email, every ignored request for appeal. And then it escalated. One morning, I found a note slipped under my trailer door. Plain white paper. Block letters. No signature. "Leave now, or we'll take this up a notch." I showed it to a friend of mine who works in law enforcement. He said flatly, "That's a threat. You need to build a case." So I did. The next week, Margaret came back, but this time, she didn't come alone. She brought private security, not police. A man in mirrored sunglasses and a polo shirt 2 sizes too small who stood there like he was guarding a VIP lounge. Margaret strutted up, waved her clipboard in my face, and announced, "You are now considered a squatter under review. I have a mortgage. My name is on the deed. I pay taxes. You think I'm a squatter on my own land?" She just blinked. "The board will decide." That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about power. Margaret wasn't enforcing policy, she was asserting control. And she thought I was too broken, too busy surviving to fight back. She was wrong. I spent 3 nights combing through old HOA documents, bylaws, amendments, scanned PDFs from 2 decades ago. On page 12 of a 2005 supplement, I found a gem. In cases of primary residence loss due to fire or natural disaster, temporary dwellings may remain on property for up to 180 days without penalty. Exactly what I needed. So I printed it out, highlighted it, and sent a formal notice to the HOA board, not just Margaret. I included the fire marshal's report, timestamped photos, everything. The next day, I got a reply from one of the board members. "We had no idea this clause existed. We'll review it." That was the crack in Margaret's armor. Then came the collapse. Sheila, The HOA treasurer showed up on my porch one morning. She was shaking. Off the record, she whispered, "Margaret never brought your case to a vote. She just started issuing fines. We trusted her. We didn't check." I thanked her. Then I went further. I posted an anonymous survey to the neighborhood Facebook group. Have you ever been unfairly fined or harassed by the HOA? Responses poured in. Over 24 homeowners told stories of absurd citations, mysterious fee hikes, and intimidation. One woman said Margaret threatened her over a garden gnome. Another said Margaret revoked her clubhouse key for hosting a birthday party. But the most damning detail came from a man named Ray. He claimed Margaret didn't even live in the neighborhood anymore. He said she sold her house a year ago and was renting just outside the official boundary but never updated the HOA records. I checked public records. Ray was right. Margaret had sold her home 18 months ago. Her current address? A rental 2 blocks over outside HOA jurisdiction. According to the bylaws, only residents in good standing could serve on the board. She was neither. With that in hand, I compiled a full report. Property records, fake fines, testimonies. I sent it to the board with a request, a public vote of removal. The board agreed. At the next meeting, the room was packed. People stood shoulder to shoulder. Even the teenagers showed up, filming with their phones. I was given the floor. I didn't grandstand. I laid it out. The illegal fines, the fake squatter status, the clause that protected my trailer, and Margaret's lack of legal standing. Margaret tried to speak, called me a liar, said my documents were doctored. Then Sheila stood up. "Margaret," she said, voice shaking, "you lied. You manipulated us. You broke our trust. You broke the rules." And then she did something beautiful. She called for a vote. Unanimous. Margaret was removed. You'd think it would end there. But there was one last twist. Because those fines, they weren't just petty. They were tied to HOA funds. And when Sheila and the new board began auditing the books, they found something else. Tens of thousands of dollars missing, allocated to maintenance vendors that didn't exist. Guess who signed every one of those payments? Margaret. Turns out, she'd been funneling HOA money into fake companies she controlled. It wasn't just power. It was profit. She was arrested within the month. The neighborhood changed. People started talking again, laughing, hosting barbecues without asking permission. The board wiped my fines. The clause that Margaret ignored was reinstated into the HOA charter with bold red ink. And the trailer? It's gone now. In its place is a new 2-bedroom home. Same mailbox, same street, but everything feels different. We even started a tradition. Every summer, we throw a community party in July. No permits, no clipboards, just music, food, and people. And every year, someone brings out the cardboard cutout of Margaret. We stick it next to the beanbag toss. Someone always aims for the clipboard. So if you ever find yourself dealing with a Margaret, someone who hides behind bylaws to bully others, who confuses control with leadership, remember this. You have more power than you think. Read the rules. Ask questions. Be louder than the fine print. Because sometimes, all it takes is one spark to burn down a house. But sometimes, that fire clears the way for something stronger. And if you made it this far, tell me, have you ever had a run-in with an HOA tyrant? Or maybe your own Margaret with a clipboard? Drop your story in the comments, like the video if this hit home, and don't forget to subscribe because justice might take time, but it's always worth the wait.